Hello, I'm Andrew Frey. This is Remote Working at Spry Fox, which is a talk I gave at GDC in March 2015, and I wanted to put it on YouTube as well so people without Vault access could also see it. And it's a case study of how Spry Fox as a company, as a remote company, makes high quality indie games without any kind of co-located team. So we're going to talk about why Spry Fox is a remote company, what benefits does that bring us. We're going to talk about the archetypal remote developer and what skills you need beyond, say, technical design or artistic skills to be a good remote developer. We're going to talk about the workflows and tools that we use at Spry Fox and how they help us work remotely. And we're going to talk about how you take this group of people who have never met before and turn them into a team that trusts each other and can be creative. So like I said, my name's Andrew Frey. I've been in the industry since 2004. And I've worked in big 200-person co-located teams. I've worked in 15-person co-located teams. And for the last 2 years, I've worked from my dining room for Spry Fox. But I'm not standing in front of you and talking as some kind of director of production or anything. We've got quite a flat structure at Spry Fox. All I'm doing here is documenting what we do already. I'm not taking credit for everything in this presentation. And also, this isn't a holy grail. This isn't something that I guarantee will work perfectly for you. This is something that works okay for us. I know we can improve it in some areas. And I know it might not be a good fit for all remote studios, but hopefully I'll highlight where those, what the drawbacks, what our choices mean in terms of drawbacks for the types of things we do. Let's talk about Spry Fox a little bit. So they've been around since 2010. These are some of the games we've made. Road Not Taken was out last year on PS4 and Steam. Alpha Bear in the bottom left is coming to mobile soon and it's going to set the world on fire. And we're truly a remote company. We're spread all over the world. We've got a guy in Argentina. We've got guys in Canada. I'm in the UK there. We do actually have 4 guys in Seattle, but they don't co-work. There's no Spry Fox headquarters that they go and work in. They meet up semi-regularly, but not necessarily to work together. We got 2 guys in San Francisco who have recently started co-working together, but it's an experiment and I can't talk really about like the benefits and drawbacks of that yet. We also aren't the kind of company that's ever had the cash to have these big expensive company holidays where we can fly everyone out. So this photo is the most Spry Foxes that have ever actually been in the room together. There's David, one of the co-founders on the left, then Ryan, Alex, Pat, Daniel, the other co-founder, and myself. And there are still people in the company. Of only 11 people, there are people in the company that I still haven't met yet. So why did we choose to be remote? Well, first of all, I'm going to flip that around and talk about why would you choose to be co-located. There's this blog post at richg42blogspot.co.uk that sort of went viral at the turn of the year. And that talked about his bad experiences, this individual's bad experiences working in Valve's Cabal rooms, and that's Valve in the top right of your screen, and how he found it very noisy and distracting. That's Bungie in the bottom left, and I've worked in that kind of setup where it's a big, empty, open plan space, and it's just full of distractions and noise and motion and very little daylight. And I've personally, as well as the person in the Valve blog post, we both found that very hard to get into the zone and to start focusing on what we're doing. And there's some science to back this up. For instance, this New Yorker article talks about a study that showed that co-located open plan spaces are damaging to the workers' attention spans, productivity, creative thinking, and satisfaction. And Peopleware mentioned this. Like, Peopleware came out 30 years ago, and Peopleware talks about how bad open plan offices are for technical people and creative people. And yet, video game studios seem to see it as kind of the default. And to be honest, all technical industries. Facebook is building the world's largest open plan office at the moment in San Francisco. They see it as a kind of, like, the argument is always that it helps communication. That if you're open plan, then you might overhear someone saying something and then be able to join in that conversation. But to me, that's like a hack. If your communication workflows are not good enough, that you need someone to accidentally, serendipitously overhear a conversation in order to have good communication in your office, then that's a hack. That's a bad thing. So you need to work on your communication skills rather than compromise everyone's productivity in pursuit of this communication ideal. I think it's maybe a strong coincidence that open plan offices also happen to be the cheapest form of packing labour into a room, and some people have also decided that's the best way of packing labour into a room. So I think that's interesting if you think about it. There are some good co-located offices. In the top right is Robot Entertainment, and they have lots of square foot per developer. They have these baffles, whiteboard baffles you can see to stop noise travelling and to stop motion being too distracting. And I also think I'm right in saying they have breakout rooms where you can jump into and really hunker down if you need to. In the bottom left is Stack Exchange, who aren't a games company, but they're a tech company, and they've gone all in on giving their developers individual offices with closable doors so they can really, really get down to focusing on what they're doing. But these things are expensive, right? We've already said that open plan is the best way of packing meat into a space. These are much more expensive. And if you can't afford to go big, maybe you should go home. And there's some science to show that, for instance, this Guardian article talks about a study that says remote workers are 13% more productive, they have fewer working sick days and a quieter working environment. Also, you can raise productivity by letting more employees work from home. So one of the big reasons that Spry Fox has chosen to do this is because we think we can provide developers with really productive environments by doing it. And that's great because productive developers are happy developers. But there's also another reason we're doing it. We really want to work with people who are really excited about working on Spry Fox games. They're not just here for the paycheck, they're here because they're excited about the type of work we do. And we also want to work with the best people in the industry. But if you limit that to just people, say, near Seattle, then you've got this tiny little intersection here. And it's a really small pool. And maybe those guys are already in jobs, maybe they're just not available right now. If instead you drop that nearest requirement, then instead you've got this much, much, much bigger pool, which means that you can really find high quality people who are really excited about working for you. And if you put them in a productive environment, then hopefully you're going to have fantastic games. There's a big but coming up. It's not for everyone. You need some additional skills on top of being a good developer in order to be a good remote developer. So let's talk about that a little bit. So the first big skill that the archetypal remote developer will need is they need to obviously be able to cope with silence. You're going to spend a lot of time at home, and you might not ever see other video game developers for a long time. You know, there are benefits to that. You can, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can play music and sing at the top of your lungs without getting dressed, you know, and that's fine until the postman knocks on the door. But the downside is you don't get the same support network that you might get if you were in a co-located place. And if you're the type of person that self-identifies as an extrovert, then you may find that even harder because you won't have that eye-to-eye, same space contact that an extrovert might need day to day in order to keep their energy levels up. Now, you can counter that maybe with co-working, but be aware that not all co-working places are born equal. For instance, I have a co-working place I go to very occasionally, and it's a good co-working space. I enjoy going there, but I don't go there for a support network. The people there are management consultants. There's a guy who runs an organic t-shirt company, and so it's not the same kind of support network that I get from a co-located place. So once you're coping with that silence, then also you have to cope with autonomy. There's a type of problem that programmers definitely have. I'm pretty sure that designers and artists and other trades get it as well, that I call the woods for the trees problem, where you're looking at an issue and you just cannot for the life of you figure out why this bug is happening. And you've gone through the code line by line and it's still broken. And in a co-located space, you would tap someone on the shoulder and they would fix it very quickly. Or even if they wouldn't fix it, in explaining the bug, sometimes you manage to figure out what it is yourself. But if there's no one to tap on the shoulder with to do that, then you need some other kind of support network. And I've mentioned this support network before. It's not just about colleagues, it's about people who can help you. And so you can find that in many places. You could find that online, on Twitter, or Reddit, or something like that. You could find that in a co-working space. You could find that just through your co-workers. But your co-workers are, if you're working remotely, then you might be working in funny time zones. They might be asleep right now. So it's not always possible to fall back on them. So not only do you need the autonomy to be able to cope with those issues when they come up, but you also need to be able to take decisions when they come up, because everyone else, as I said, might be asleep. So you need to have the experience to be able to take a good enough decision whenever those come up without blocking or having to wait on everyone else waking up. Or at least you need to understand when there's a decision that you shouldn't take yourself. So you need that kind of level of experience to be able to get through both of these problems. A good remote developer also needs to be self-aware. It's much, much harder for a manager to pick up on either professional or personal problems with a developer when they're not seeing them. When all they see of them is the odd sentence popping up in the chat client, then it's much, much harder for them to pick up on these issues than if they're in a co-located space where they could be walking past their desk and seeing it. So developers need to have the self-awareness to be able to look at themselves, identify when these issues are coming up, and then share them, and not be self-conscious about sharing those issues. And that's not to excuse the manager of the responsibility of over this area, but it's just to say it needs to be much more of a two-way street than in a co-located space. And it needs to be communicative. And it's really, really important skill. I mean, it's an important skill in a co-located space, but in a co-located space, you can maybe pull it out of people where that's much harder to do through a chat client. If anything, they need to err on the side of oversharing information, like we said. It's much, much easier to dial back too much sharing than it is to dial up not enough sharing. Time zones aren't necessarily a skill, but they're certainly something you have to be aware of if you're either thinking of working for a remote company or if you're hiring someone for your remote company. There must be some overlap between the remote worker and colleagues so that there can be some real-time sync up. For instance, I work in the UK. I work mainly on GMT. Most of Spry Fox works on a kind of West Coast time, which is 8 hours behind me. And so you can see there in the green sections, I work a bit in the morning, I have a lunch break, I work a bit in the afternoon, but then I'll save some of my daily hours. I'm still only working 8 hours a day, but I'm saving some hours so I can come back in the evening, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I'll do some more work then when I know the majority of Spry Fox is going to be awake and working. In fact, Spry Fox hours are so skewy. Some people like staying up very, very, very late, working very, very late and having a very long lie-in the morning. So sometimes I'll get up and I'll start working at 8 or 9 and there'll be people still awake and I'll be able to sync up with them for a second time. But be aware it does have an impact on your private life. If you have a young family or if you maybe can't commit to those funny hours, then it needs to be something you think about before you take a remote working job. So to summarize then, a good remote developer needs to be autonomous, trusted, self-aware, and communicative. And those are kind of the textbook definition of a senior or principal developer. And so it's very hard to be a junior remote developer. In co-located studios, there's this pyramid of lots of juniors with a few seniors, like bringing them up and training them up. And you haven't got the bandwidth to do that effectively when you're a remote team. And your remote developers, if they're junior, will not be effective. So a fully remote team is going to be a team that's fully senior, high-quality developers. And that's something to bear in mind. Let's talk about communication bandwidth. This is something that's going to ripple through the whole rest of this talk. So we all know text sucks a lot. It sucks not only, it sucks for many reasons. And the first reason is it's going to be your principal form of communication, which means you're going to expose all of the flaws in it. Flaws like having really weak threading, for instance, not knowing if something you've typed into the chat or something you see in chat, is that a response to a question further up or is that an answer to you? And also that it lacks really important vital audio-visual cues. You're missing out on huge amounts of communication bandwidth. That is unwritten communication, like where are my eyes looking when I'm talking to you? What are my hands doing? What's my posture? what's the tone of my voice, and not only the tone of my voice, where are the pauses in my speech that might give you subtle clues as to my emotions and what the subtext of what I'm saying is. And there's a good Key and Peele sketch that highlights this, where they're texting each other and trying to arrange when to go out in the night. And Peele in the top left says, I assumed you'd meet at the bar, whatever, I don't care. He's just trying to be easy, he's trying to be casual, he's trying to be as friendly as he can. But when Key reads that, he's like, whatever, I don't care. How could he be so rude and dismissive? And so it becomes clear that not only does text suck, but also text blows. You're not only missing vital information, but you're also misinterpreting vital information. If you're going to communicate well via text, it takes a lot of effort. You're going to be rephrasing stuff to avoid ambiguity. You're going to be stopping typing. When you see what in Skype, when you see X is typing, then you're going to stop typing yourself to wait to see what they say first. And you're going to be very accommodating. If someone else says something, you're going to try and avoid a confrontation because confrontations are so hard to resolve via text. So you're going to be as accommodating as you can to what they want. And because of that, sometimes the Spry Fox chat channels can feel like quite a formal place because we're all talking without ambiguity and we're being so accommodating. And there's a weird kind of atmosphere for ostensibly what's a very, very creative company to feel so formal atmosphere sometimes. So we're going to come later on into how we get around that. But for now, I want to go on to talk about our workflows and tools. How do we get over that communication bandwidth problem? Well, the first thing we do is look at our team size. Well, this is one person in a 20-person team, and this is all the communication they have to do with multiple people. And if they're all remote and your communication bandwidth problems kick in, they have to put so much more effort into each individual line of communication, it becomes dominating and overwhelming. So what we did is cut our team size drastically. So a project in Spry Fox might be 5 people at most. We once had a project with 10 people and no one liked the experience. And that means you can keep devoting what you need to communication without compromising how much time you're spending on actually developing stuff. And that suits us because we like making small games. We like making innovative small games and shipping them quickly. And that's really good if you've got a really small team. And working remotely is really good with a small team. So it just happens to all click together. So when you're choosing a chat client, because you're going to be spending most of your time in chat, then there are some features you want to talk about. This is in rough priority order now from high to low. So rooms. We have a chat room per project. And that means that other people who aren't in that specific project, because like I said, we've got 10 people, but we've got 3 to 5 person projects. So there might be multiple projects going on at the same time. And it stops notifications getting out of hand for projects you're not involved with. You need a persistent searchable history, so you can go back to that line of text from however many months ago for that advert provider SDK that you needed or whatever. Mentions are great for being able to pull people into a chat group. For instance, our art director might span all of the projects and you want to pull him in when there's something specifically for him to look at. Guests and external accounts are great for when you're working with contractors. And finally, if your chat client can take a single room and turn it into a voice over IP or video call, then that's great because it makes it really easy to jump into chat or video, jump into voice or video. We use Google Docs for all kinds of documents, spreadsheets, and that's because it's self-evident. I think people in even co-locator space are starting to use it now because it's got such great comments, history, and collaboration tools. We use a kind of blog post style design doc, which is really great for seeing the history of decisions in a project. There's more detail on that at this blog post. I won't go into it now. We use Trello for project management. We can get away with Trello, even though it's quite lightweight, because we have those small projects and small teams. But whatever project management software you use, some people are better updating it than others. Be really anal about keeping that stuff up to date, because the moment you stop paying attention to the Trello board is the moment where everyone stops having faith in what everyone's working on at the moment. We use Dropbox as our cloud storage, although there's lots of other cloud storage things that are getting just as good and just as seamless now. We use it, for instance, for internal builds. So I can create a build of a project and put it to Dropbox /project/latest, and it was synced to everyone's machines, and there's no kind of manual process they have to go through. They know that if they go to latest, there's a build there, and they can play it, and there's no installers. It's also got some cute little features, like, for instance, you can screen grab using the native screen grab tools, at least on OS X. You can screen grab, and it will copy that into the clipboard immediately with a Dropbox link to that screenshot you just took, and then you can paste that into the chat channel. And the good thing about that is that it's very easy to iterate on, say, UI and highlight bugs and bring those into the chat channel. How do we deal with time zones? What tool do we use? Well, if you're the person who's awake overnight, working while everyone else is asleep, then be ready for the handover. Have some work ready for them to look at. Be leaving comments throughout the day, even though you know there's no one there, so they can see a log of what you've done when you wake up. Communicate your presence really well. So for instance, that little gap where I disappear in the evening to put my daughter to bed and have dinner and maybe have a bit of relaxing time, that I communicate. I'll say I'm going to be AFK for a few hours. I'll let people know, and then when I come back, I'll say I'm back now. Sometimes I might be checking Skype when I'm not at the computer, and I'll say that. I'll say, here's me at the bottom here. I'll say I'm still AFK, and here's the answer to your question. And so they know not to expect me to be able to make any code changes or anything like that. You can use Google Calendar, which will sort out time zones for appointments. Or, for instance, you could use something like World Time Zone Buddy for sorting out who's in what time zone and what time is it for them. And finally, I have this kind of informal idea that Spry Fox time is Seattle time, because most people are West Coast. We've got Vancouver, we've got Seattle, we've got San Francisco. So if I know that I'm 8 hours in front of Spry Fox time, then I can easily make adjustments for most people I'm talking to and say, well, I'll come back and talk to you at 2 p.m. your time, because I have that concept in my head of how far in front of I am. Let's talk about this. So I think this is the most interesting part of the talk. This is, how do we take a group of people who have never met and then make them work together? And it's a difficult problem because really good teams need to trust each other. You need to trust what is the other person capable of, what is another person, what can I delegate to them, what shouldn't I delegate to them, and I don't want to second guess the work that's coming back. I want to have trust in what they're going to do. And a key component in trust is familiarity. But we can't have familiarity because in-person socializing is incredibly hard when there's time zones and oceans between you. So what we try to do is this kind of idea of taking every little, rather than having one team building event or something to do that, instead we spread out the team building and the socializing across every single workflow we have. We put a little crowbar in there and we make a little space, a space for personality, where you can be yourself and other people can get to know you only through working for you. And the team building stuff is then just a factor on top of that. And we'll see some examples of that later. But the first most important thing that you have to do is use video as much as possible. So we've said chat sucks, and you will use chat a lot. But also you want to use video as much as you can. It gives you back all of that tone and body language that you were missing before. I mean, you still miss some things because normally it's quite a tight headshot. You're not going to get full body language. But it's going to give you so much more than you had via chat. It's important that you make a really low barrier to entry here. There's no dress code. I've had conversations with people in Spry Fox who have been in dressing gowns or in bed. And that's not important because all I want is that face-to-face communication. Don't be embarrassed about that. It's difficult as well. It's difficult to get people to use chat because by our nature, like from our definition at the start of the talk, we talked about how these people who work well remotely are also really comfortable with working alone a lot of the time, right? So these are mainly introverts. I'm an introvert. These are mainly introverted people, which means that it's kind of hard to get them to use video sometimes, but you just have to keep plugging away at it and saying, well, I'm going to use video, up to you if you use video, and hoping it bleeds and everyone starts using it. Voice calls are a distant second best, but they're substantially better than chat, and once you get to know someone, they can be pretty good. One little hack you can do is change your default avatar in whatever chat program you're using, change it so it's a picture of your face and your mouth and your eyes, not a cartoon, your mouth and your eyes, and then someone can look at that picture and get quite a lot of relatedness from talking to you, even if it's only via voice. So one of the processes we have is a bi-weekly company call where we take everyone across the whole company gets on a chat together, gets on a voice call together, and we can talk about different projects and how they're going. And that's a way of cross-pollinating information around the company. We also do bi-weekly one-on-ones with the co-founders, and that's to try and combat that issue I talked about where it's very hard to pick up on professional and personal issues. So bi-weekly is much higher frequency than I've had in most other companies because exactly of that issue. We're trying to capture those personal professional issues before they develop. We also have two global chat rooms. We have one for random chat and we have one for company business. There's not a lot of strictness about which goes in which. It doesn't matter. But the important thing here is that there's somewhere where we can just spew random crap and people can talk to each other and get to know each other and socialize just a little bit informally, and a bit of noise, just a bit of noise to make it not feel like it's empty. This is one of the good morning is one of the little space personality things that we did, and when I explain it to you, you'll be like, that seems really trivial, why are you covering it? But it actually made a huge difference when we started doing it. So in the morning, all you do is when you're ready for work, when you're ready to be a Spry Fox, you sit down, you open the chat client and you type good morning and hit enter. And there's no expectation of reply, so the 10th person to log on doesn't get 9 replies saying good morning. And the most obvious thing it does is just communicate presence. So it's to say, hello, I'm here right now, I'm ready to work, you can start asking me questions. But the also little thing it does is just introduce some random noise. Sometimes the global chat channel, if nothing came up to talk about, say if there were no big news stories for a couple of days, the chat channel might be empty for a couple of days. And that can lead to sometimes making it more feel like a group of subcontractors working on the same project rather than a team or a company. So by doing this and just introducing a little bit of random noise every day, ensuring there's always something appearing in that chat channel, that makes it feel more like a company. We also have different flavors of it. You can have fun with it. So you can, for instance, on Tuesdays, instead of saying good morning, you say what you're listening to right now. What song are you listening to? What album are you really into? Or you could say it in different languages. Or for a while, I used to Google Shakespearean greetings and say Shakespearean and try to play up the fact that I'm the English guy. Birthdays are interesting. So they're always a little bit special in a co-located studio. Someone's birthday, there's some cake, you go to the kitchen, it's just a little break in your day. It just feels special. It's somewhere below, like going to the pub, but it's above, say, going out for lunch to get a sandwich or something. You know, it's a little bit rare, it's a little bit special. It makes you feel more like a team and more like you know each other. We can't do that because we haven't got a kitchen, right? Or we've all got kitchens, but no kitchen together. So instead what we do is create a little secret chat group with everyone apart from the person whose birthday it is. And we all get together and we open up a collaborative drawing tool. We normally use Google Docs for this just because we've tried lots of whiteboarding tools and they've always broken or something. So we use Google Docs. We open it up and we all draw a silly little stupid picture wishing that person happy birthday. These are some of the ones that we've done. There are some people in the company who are better than others at art, but it's not, you know, no one cares about the quality of what you do here. We like talking and bouncing ideas off each other and then saying, oh my God, who did the totally radical fox? That's awesome. We should talk about that. Or Pat's looks really dreamy in the top left. Or in the top right, we used to have a guy work for us called Fedor, and someone gave him a most Fedorable trophy for his birthday, which I think is an incredible pun and I love it. But it's just so much fun to do these things and to get together and to talk about it. And then we put a link to it in the main chat. We say happy birthday, but that's not really the point of it. Like, the point has been done by the time we give it to the birthday person. It's really for everyone else. And hopefully everyone gets involved in that over the course of the year, so no one feels left out. And it's an incredibly fun thing to do. We tried weekly multiplayer. It seems like an obvious thing to do, but time zones made this hard and for various reasons didn't really stick. But if you are going to do this, then you want something that's collaborative and chatty, because the main purpose is to get to know each other, right? It's a team building exercise. So you don't want something like Team Fortress 2, which is non-stop rah, shooting, blah, blah, blah. Something like Minecraft, with its day and night cycle, can give you that white space you need to talk and get to know each other. So that's the end of the talk. I'm going to give you a quick recap. Team building is really hard. You need space for personality in your workflows so people can get familiar with each other, and then hopefully trust follows. Communication takes a lot of effort, whatever form it takes. You're going to be putting a lot of time into making sure that you're communicating well, much more than in a co-located studio. The workflows I've shown you do not scale well beyond 10. There are various hacks you can do for that, but we don't do them, so I can't talk about whether they work or not. A remote studio is a productive studio. Everyone will be highly productive. They'll have their own quiet working environments. And if you take a trusted talented team from a huge talent pool and put them into that productive environment, then hopefully you get great games out the other end. So thank you very much. Here's some resources you could look at. Google the Y Team podcast. So things like the Good Morning thing came from the Y Teams podcast. It's a great resource. There's some communities you could look at say, Stack Exchange or Reddit. And lastly, this GitHub link. I'll put links to all these in the notes on the YouTube video. But this GitHub repo has a great list of loads of blogs and books and lots of stuff you can do in order to become a better co-working company. You can find these slides at my website, tenpn.com. You can follow me at tenpn on Twitter. Also, you can check out spryfox.com to see our latest games, and you can email me at andrew.frey@gmail.com. Thank you very much for watching.